Recruiting and retaining skilled employees is a critical challenge, particularly for CEOs of small and medium-sized businesses. In smaller organizations, every individual plays a crucial role, making effective recruitment even more essential, especially when filling management positions. Experienced managers can often make accurate, informed assessments of a candidate's professional and personal qualities during the interview process. What is more difficult to predict are cases where, despite careful selection, promising individuals may encounter difficulties adapting to the company culture and operational processes. Unfortunately, a recurring scenario arises where, after investing a year in an individual's training and development, with plans for their future within the company, the employee may abruptly resign and seek employment elsewhere, sometimes even joining a competitor. In addition to the personal disappointment and financial implications, management must face the reality of lost time and resources invested in bringing an individual up to speed, only to have them depart prematurely. All that investment is now lost. So it remains a significant challenge for many CEOs. A Bayesian Belief Network, BBN, could potentially provide valuable insights into prospects for employee retention, if not definitive predictions. With the assistance of experienced CEOs, we can construct an appropriate BBN to aid in this effort. So, assuming that we hired a qualified individual, let us start the construction of our network with our goal node, which will hopefully give us a prediction of how probable long-term employment is for a given employee. Experts suggest that this outcome is influenced by two primary factors: firstly, the level of job satisfaction and happiness of the employee, and secondly, the degree of satisfaction of the company's management regarding the employee's performance. Employee satisfaction is primarily influenced by three factors: whether the job is interesting and challenging, the quality of personal interactions with coworkers and managers, and the level of compensation, namely salary and benefits. Company satisfaction is primarily driven by employee performance, specifically, the manner in which an employee executes his or her responsibilities. Intelligence, educational attainment, and accumulated experience in the individual's field of expertise are the three most important objective parameters that can increase the likelihood of a successful outcome. Furthermore, it is universally acknowledged that an employee's happiness and enthusiasm about his or her employment has a significant impact on their performance. Therefore, a causal link between the node that captures the employee's happiness level and the node that captures that individual's performance level is definitely called for. Having constructed a basic model of a relatively complex problem, we naturally ask ourselves whether this is adequate to capture the problem space in sufficient detail to generate valuable insight. We don't have an answer to that yet, so let's continue to explore. We have some prior data for most of the nodes at the top of the network, so let's fill those with data that we can find. Where we won't find data, we will use our own experts' estimates. The first node that we will populate with numbers is the education node. A quick query using either Google Search or ChatGPT, as in this example, gives us the supporting information we need, and it is fed into the node. Once the network is operational, we will be able to specify any level of education for a candidate recruit on this node. A web search for the distribution of IQ levels among individuals yields a bell-shaped curve with the median at 100 points. This suggests that approximately 25% have an IQ that's higher than average. Filling in the numbers for the experience of applicants in years is accomplished by noting that college graduation age is around 22, so looking at the typical applicant age in the graph sketch on the left, -22, gives us an idea of the level of work experience to expect. A representative graph illustrating the real-world interactions between experience and education and how they affect compensation can be found at the bottom of the illustrations on the left. It would have made sense to draw causal relationships, indicated by dashed lines, from the experience and education nodes to the salary node using information from this graph. That would be appropriate in most cases, but as we will see in a moment, we would prefer to have complete control over the compensation in this case, so we won't be injecting this information into the network just yet. For now, we have set an arbitrary 70% average versus 30% above average, quantifying the good salary node. We really can't say what percentage of the time people find their jobs very interesting versus only sometimes. so we're leaving it at 50% each for now. We are also applying our experts' best guess for the distribution of social skills among employees, based on inputs from a few CEOs. All that remains now is to compile the network, which updates the children of the priors, and down all the way to the last node, the node that will hopefully show us the probability of long-term employment for select candidates. Before we can use this network, we must complete an important phase in the construction of Bayesian belief networks: verification and validation of the model. One way to do this is to drive the network into extreme situations and see how it behaves. Let's see how this is done. For example, let's copy for reference the current probabilities next to the two nodes employer satisfaction and employee satisfaction. Next, let's drive all of the employees' satisfaction parent nodes to their best outcome, namely 100% above average salary, 100% very interesting work, and 100% very good social interactions. When the network is compiled again, the probabilities throughout the network change. The difference between the new values and the previous nominal values show to what extent the satisfaction of the employee plays a decisive role in the prediction of the long-term employment. Looking down at the long-term employment node, we see a probability of almost 70%, far better than the initial ratio between probable and improbable, which was almost a draw. It is also evident that with the current settings and beliefs in the network, 70% seems like the highest possible outcome. Let's try something else now, and let's also assume for argument's sake that we are past the validation stage, and are now using this Bayesian belief network to learn about our options for improving the outcome we are looking for. We already saw that the happiness of the employee plays a critical role in the outcome. But what is the dominant factor? Is it the salary, the work interest, or the social interactions? We can easily discover sensitivities of posteriors in Bayesian belief networks by taking the posterior to its extreme and seeing in which node the backtrack probability has changed the most. Let's illustrate this. Here's one extreme, a 100% improbable outcome. We now note the probabilities of the top state in each of the three parents of the employee's satisfaction node. Next, we switch the outcome to 100% probable and calculated the difference between the two extremes for each of the three nodes. It is clear from this check that interesting work comes out first, salary is second, and social interactions is third. By the way, we can also ask Netica to supply us instantly with a table that includes contributions of all the nodes to the outcome in the network. Netica performs exactly the same calculation as we did here to illustrate the method. What is the upshot of this for our CEO? If she wants to increase the chances that her new recruit will stay in the company, she should first make sure that he has a challenging and interesting work to do. Then, worry about his salary and whether he will get along with the team. This is at least the conclusion for the type of company that our experts had in mind when they helped us construct this Bayesian belief network. And now, our CEO knows better how to write an attractive job description for this applicant, and also start thinking where in the company would be the most interesting placement for this person. Could this CEO, interviewing this promising applicant, have discovered these priorities without the help of the network? Probably not. Before we end this video, let's also go briefly over one ingredient of this and other Bayesian belief networks that we haven't spoken much about: Conditional Probability Tables, CPTs. These tables reside inside each node and are accessed in Netica by clicking on the node of interest. Apart from Bayes' theorem, which is always applied to the calculation of probabilities, CPTs define the way, and especially the amount, by which the relationships between states are brought about. CPTs are editable and accessible to the builders of the network. CPTs are an essential component of Bayesian belief networks, BBNs. Let's understand what they are and how they work. Consider, for example, the CPT of the long-term employment outlook node. The first row of the CPT states that when both employee satisfaction and employer satisfaction are high, there is a 90% probability of long-term employment. The second row states that with high employee satisfaction and low employer satisfaction, the probability of long-term employment drops to 60%. The third row states that with low employee satisfaction and high employer satisfaction, there is a 40% probability of long-term employment. The fourth row states that when both the employee and the employer satisfaction are low, there is a probability of long-term employment of 30%. Is there proof that these numbers are correct? No, but they clearly make sense and define a trend. In short, this CPT is a sequence that any of us would have answered had we been asked, how does employer satisfaction and employee job satisfaction affect long-term employment? The probability values are defined by the experts, based on their experience, understanding and intuition. Similarly, looking now at the node employer satisfaction. The first row states that when performance is high, there is a 90% probability that employer satisfaction will be high. The second row states that when performance is average, there is a 30% probability that employer satisfaction will be high. The third row states that when performance is low, there is just a 5% probability that employer satisfaction will be high. Again, the CPT of that node is merely a complete, both qualitative and quantitative answer to the question, how does employee performance affect employer satisfaction? Here's also the CPT of the node employee satisfaction. So it all makes sense, and is not too difficult to define, it just takes time. The number of rows in a CPT are the number of combinations of the states in all the parent nodes. This can grow very rapidly when a node has more than 2 to 3 parent nodes, with more than 2 states each. For example, the CPT of the node employee satisfaction has a total of 2 by 2 by 3 equals 12 rows. Similarly, the CPT of the node performance, which we didn't open up here, has a total of 36 rows. It does take an hour or so, for a person familiar with the problem space, to fill out the CPTs in a typical Bayesian belief network with around 10 to 15 nodes. Machine learning algorithms can automate the process of filling in CPTs, analyzing real-world data, and extracting the underlying relationships between variables. This approach eliminates the need for manual estimation, and expedites the creation of BBNs. We have shown how this works in other BBN videos on this channel. In a subsequent video, we will explore a technique for automatically generating CPTs, without relying on a table of prior cases. This method is applicable under specific conditions, such as when the states exhibit monotonous behavior. What emerges from this last discussion is central to Bayesian belief networks. Because of the way BBNs are built, when human expert intervention is desired, for instance in order to define the relationships between parameters, it is rarely an interaction between more than 3 parameters at a time. Situations involving 3 or less interrelated parameters are still within human grasp and definition, even in complex situations. However, beyond 3 to 4 variables that interact with each other, people have difficulties. Using Bayesian belief networks, complexity is not sacrificed, so a full and rich system, or world model, can be constructed piece by piece, each time with a small number of variables. This provides on the one hand full transparency, which is crucial for human oversight and ability for editing, while on the other hand not sacrificing the richness and complexity of the model. One last word regarding this video. It should be noted that the Bayesian belief network we built for this example is a significant oversimplification of the actual world of human resource management and hiring of personnel. As in other videos on this channel, we also made some shortcuts to save time. So of course this network is intended for educational purposes only.